PSG spent 7 years building the entire club around one man, Kylian Mbappe, and in all those 7 years, they never won the Champions League, but as soon as that guy left the team, Enrique's side immediately lifted their cherished trophy above their heads. Even funnier is the fact that exactly 2 days before Mbappe signed his contract with Real Madrid, the Madrid side had already raised the Champions League trophy, not because they had one superstar player, but because they were a team that kept coming back from the dead against Bayern Munich, against Manchester City, through pure collective will and character which no statistic can measure. And then Mbappe arrived, he scored plenty, but trophies stopped coming. Barca win, but Real do not. They cannot even get their hands on some domestic cup, and at the same time, the club you left, the very same one where everyone pointed a finger at you as the problem, Seagoist that goes and wins Europe's biggest prize. One well-known football expert put it this way: whether he wanted it or not, he destroyed that team. There is no real chemistry, and the only variable that changed is Kylian Mbappe. But to understand exactly what went wrong, we first need to remember what things were like before him. Season 2023-24. Real Madrid win the Champions League and La Liga without a classic world-class striker, without a big-name number 9, just a system, collective pressing, quick transitions, a midfield that could control any match. Bellingham made runs into the box from deep and scored crucial goals. Vinicius on the left flank did whatever he wanted with defenders, and no one got in his way. At the base of the entire structure sat Toni Kroos, quietly, calmly, unhurriedly. 92% passing accuracy. He simply conducted the whole match manually. But here we need to digress a little and talk about this guy. The simplicity of Kroos's actions always deceive people. You might think, what's so special? He passes sideways and backwards, but his genius lay precisely in that simplicity. He always saw the game as if from a bird's eye view, and most importantly, he regulated the tempo. When to slow down and when to explode. He set the rhythm for the entire team so that the others didn't even notice. He was the very structure on which everything rested. Then he retired. And this is the key moment of the entire story. Real Madrid needed a new conductor, a holding midfielder who would take over what Kroos did, controlling space, managing tempo, covering for Bellingham when he pushed forward. This was obvious to anyone who watched the team. It was the element without which the system simply could not survive in its existing form. But instead, Florentino Perez went after Mbappe, and you know, the decision itself wasn't a disaster. Mbappe at the time was probably the best player in the world. Not signing him for free would have been a huge mistake. The problem is what he is as a footballer, tactically speaking. Mbappe does not work as a classic number 9. He doesn't play with his back to goal, doesn't compete for aerial ball. When you're in that situation, look, go and play the 9 position. He's very passive. He drifts away and then comes back. He doesn't even read the cross. It would be a simple tap in. I've said this many times. However, he loves the left half space, the very zone that Vinicius had spent 3 years turning into the most dangerous area in world football. And here problems arose. Both wanted the same space, and no one at the club, not a single person, asked the most obvious question. What actually happens when you put 2 players in the same zone, neither of whom is willing to work for the other? The answer wasn't long in coming. Problems on the left flank started from the very first match day and continued throughout the season. Both chased the same patch of grass on the left side of the pitch again and again, match after match. One runs there, the other is already standing there. They simply got in each other's way. Out of the more than 1,300 passes Vinicius made over the season, only 15% reached Mbappe. In the opposite direction, it was roughly the same. Think about that number. The 2 best players of the same team barely interacted with each other. That is not a partnership. That's 2 individuals pursuing their careers in parallel. In the same kit, on the same pitch, but in different universes. Not creating, not complementing each other, just occupying the same space and canceling out each other's effectiveness. And here's what's interesting. The one who suffered the most was neither Mbappe nor Vinicius. It was Bellingham. Thierry Henry pointed out during a Champions League broadcast, Bellingham made runs into the box, and he did it correctly, like a proper center forward, while the nominal center forward of the team at that time was standing somewhere on the left half space. Moreover, he had no impact on the attack. He didn't press, didn't trouble the defenders, didn't pull them out of position. He just stood and waited for the the ball. As a result, Bellingham started dropping deeper and deeper to plug the holes that appeared because of this. A player who scored 23 league goals in his debut season, a contender for the Ballon d'Or, was now forced to run all over the pitch, not knowing what to grab hold of. Now let's look at the defensive numbers, because here the picture becomes truly dreadful. The average number of tackles dropped from 46 to 40 per match. In certain Champions League games, for example against Arsenal, the opponent ran 14 kilometers more. 14 kilometers? That's roughly as if one of your players never set foot on the pitch at all. Pressing efficiency fell from nearly 30% to 25%. What does that mean in practice? Every time Real Madrid lost the ball in the middle third, the opponent had 2 free seconds to launch an attack, and there was no cover from midfield because Kroos was long gone. Over the entire season, Mbappe made 9 tackles. 9 for the whole year. Rodrigo, a player with incomparably less influence and a fraction of the salary, made 19 in the same period. When the man at the tip doesn't press, the entire line behind him simply crumbles. Everyone looks at the one ahead. If he doesn't run, why should I run? And in the end, the whole mechanism falls apart. In those stretches of the season when Mbappe was injured or not playing, Real Madrid's win rate in La Liga rose to 90%. The structure suddenly returned. Valverde gained the freedom to move forward and did so brilliantly. Vinicius found his zone again and became the Vinicius we all know. The team remembered how to play together, then Mbappe returned from injury and everything went back to how it was. The same problems, the same mess. Another issue concerns Xabi Alonso. In January, Real Madrid sacked a man who had built his football philosophy around discipline, pressing, and collective structure. A man who had proven his ideas could work in Germany with Bayer Leverkusen. The results weren't catastrophic, the football wasn't broken, but the dressing room split. Stories leaked from the Valdebebas training ground that any PSG fan would have recognized from the first word. The team's veteran said that Alonso was treating the star too harshly, demanding too much, unwilling to adapt the whole system to one person. And when the club's management sided with the players, the entire club received a very clear message. The coach is not the boss, the stars are untouchable. And once that becomes clear to everyone inside, no system, no tactical plan works anymore. And this isn't the first time this merry-go-round has come full circle. At PSG, Thomas Tuchel built a real team, led them to the Champions League final for the first time in the club's history. And after he tried to hold Mbappe accountable for being late to a team meeting because Mbappe wanted to watch the first half of Barcelona versus Real Madrid, Tuchel was forced to apologize personally to the player. Publicly, Tuchel left and soon won the Champions League with Chelsea. Then Pochettino arrived and gradually stopped being a coach in the full sense of the word. He simply managed personalities, not a team. Football lost any footballing substance. Galtier lasted less than a year because the role he offered Mbappe didn't match what had been promised earlier. In Madrid, this scenario is simply repeating itself. That famous dressing room harmony under Ancelotti, the very glue that held the team together during the toughest moments of those great Champions League nights, never recovered after Mbappe's arrival. When Kroos and Modric were still there, the hierarchy worked by itself effortlessly. Everyone knew who spoke first in the dressing room before a match, who took the penalty in the 88th minute, who approached a young player and told him straight to his face what he was doing wrong. That clarity gave everyone confidence. With their departure, it vanished. Mbappe and Vinicius began to compete for the status of top dogs. Squabbles over set pieces, over whom the system is built around, over who leads the team. These are not small things. In Madrid, the price of a mistake is too high. In January, after the Super Cup final against Barcelona, a moment occurred that put everything in its place. Alonso asked the team to go out and pay tribute to the opponent. That's a standard procedure, an old football tradition, and Barcelona in their time used to line up, and no one's ego was hurt by it. In this situation, the Real Madrid players were getting ready to form the line, but Mbappe refused at that moment and ordered the others not to line up, and part of the team followed the Frenchman. This wasn't an emotional outburst after a painful defeat, it was a demonstration, open, public, of who really calls the shots at this club. By that point, Alonso had already lost the dressing room. Florentino Perez spent a huge amount of money on a forward who was tactically redundant in an already functioning system, and at the same time spent nothing on a holding midfielder, the only thing the system really needed after Kroos left. It's like putting another coat of paint on your Bentley while your engine is falling apart. PSG's experience had already given a perfectly clear answer to all these questions before anything even started in Madrid. In Mbappe's last season in Paris, his personal statistics were fantastic. 44 goals, 10 assists, but there were problems in the Champions League. In the year he left, PSG under Luis Enrique thrashed Inter 5-0 in the final. Dembélé won the Ballon d'Or. The team without its best player became better, simply because the structure could finally breathe. Enrique said to him directly, "Michael Jordan defended like crazy. You cannot be a leader without suffering together with everyone else." Mbappe did not change, Enrique did not bend, and in the end he won everything because the club finally stood behind the manager. This is not a story about one failed transfer, it is a story about how a club temporarily forgot a simple truth. The crest on the chest matters more than the name on the back. Mbappe is one of the finest finishers in the history of football. That is the fact and no one disputes it. But being a great finisher and being part of a great team are two completely different things. Real Madrid learned this the hard way. PSG won their first Champions League the year he left. Real Madrid are going through their worst years when he arrived. The data doesn't lie, it just sometimes takes time and a little courage to state it honestly.